You're listening to In the Fast Lane. This is episode number 13 of the official podcast of the Australian Grand Prix. In the Fast Lane, episode 13 is brought to you by Kaspersky. My name is Matt Clayton, and a little later on, we're going to be joined by a very special guest, Brazil's 11-time Formula One Grand Prix winner, Rubens Barrichello. It was another busy Sunday on 4 and 2 wheels last weekend, with MotoGP in Barcelona for the Grand Prix of Catalunya, and we had another dramatic twist in the championship with Fabio Quartararo victorious for Yamaha, the Frenchman taking the championship lead by 8 points with his third win of the year. Suzuki pair Joan Mir and Alex Rins rounded out the podium, with Mir rising to second in the standings after former championship leader Andrea Dovizioso crashed out on the first lap. In better news for Ducati, Australia's Jack Miller finished fifth, a little over 3 seconds behind Quartararo as the entire field battled with tyre wear late in the race. Jack stayed in sixth place in the championship with 6 races remaining. And there was good and bad news for fans of Valentino Rossi. The good was that the doctor has signed with the Petronas Yamaha team to take his World Championship career into a 26th season next year. Incredible to think. But the bad was Rossi crashing out of second place with just 8 laps remaining. On 4 wheels, we had the Russian Grand Prix in Sochi, and we had 2 Mercedes drivers, along with one from Red Bull on the podium, but not in the order we've become accustomed to, with Valtteri Bottas taking his second victory of 2020. Joining me to discuss that is a man who knows exactly how many races he's attended, but doesn't feel the need to tell everyone about it. It's hello to my co-host, Michael Laminato.
Hello, Matt. Yes, I can tell you this many, it's been 0, so... Not surprising, though.
Yeah, this year you're not adding to your tally, so you'll have to hold off on the T-shirt or the gold medal or whatever you award yourself for next year, perhaps. But look, a second win this season for Bottas, as I said, but one that was rather handed to him by a pre-race error by Mercedes involving his teammate Lewis Hamilton. It did rob us of an intriguing race given their divergent tyre strategies, but what a strange error by Mercedes and by Hamilton.
It was very strange, wasn't it? And one of the more obscure rules that could have been used against a driver, I think, to penalise him, doing a practice start in the practice area at the end of the pit lane before taking to the grid at the start of the race. He did it twice, not in the area, although there was some debate among Mercedes personnel about where that area was, but the steward said it wasn't that one, and Hamilton therefore accrued 2 5-second penalties, which really put a crimp on his race, I think it's fair to say, because even though he had what he said was the unfavourable strategy starting on the soft tyre, on evidence of the pace he showed nonetheless, probably would have won this race, or at least contended for it, had he had, I would say, even if he had only 1 5-second penalty, he might have been in with the shout, but 2 was certainly too much, even for him.
Certainly was, and I think his head dropped a little bit there. We heard some of the chat across the radio. So what it meant was that Bottas took the race win, Max Verstappen qualified and finished second. One of the qualifying laps of the year, I'd have to say, for Max to get second there, and Lewis Hamilton third. A little further back, in 5th place, came Daniel Ricciardo, who kept up this really strong run of recent form for Renault. That's 4th, 6th, 4th and 5th in the past 4 races for Daniel. He's now just 2 points off 4th place in the Drivers' Championship. Sort of the prize for best of the rest this season is something to aim at. Did enjoy his little radio message when he got his own penalty. It was a little bit more positive than Lewis's, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think he was told he had a 5-second penalty. Daniel did say afterwards he was kind of expecting it, so his response was, all right, I'll drive faster, and the response back was, cheers, mate. So it's pretty simple, I think, isn't it? Sometimes you just have to give the facts, put them on the table, and work around it. And in fact, the penalty didn't cost him anything in the end because he did drive faster, and he managed to end up more than 5 seconds up the road from Charles Leclerc. He is really in some fine form, isn't he, Daniel? You know, it's unfortunate that he doesn't quite have the car to do more than hope for podiums rather than snipe for them, I think it's fair to say. But, I mean, he's certainly got the measure of his teammate at the moment, although for a little bit in the race, Esteban Ocon did show himself quite well. And like you say, an unlikely lofty position in the championship standings.
Well, when you look at what he's driving relative to the guys around him in the standings, he's doing particularly well at the moment. And driving fast is always a good thing, isn't it? But look, 7 races left. Hamilton's lead was trimmed to 44 points, but he is almost unbackable to make it 7 world titles to equal Michael Schumacher's record. And he'll be on Schumacher's home turf in Germany in 2 weeks' time as he attempts to join him on 91 Grand Prix wins at the Nürburgring. A footnote to the race in Russia was that Alfa Romeo's Kimi Raikkonen made his record-equalling 322nd Formula One start. Kimi finished 14th in Sochi, but he's now tied in the record books with this week's special guest. Joining us on this week's episode of In the Fast Lane is a driver who won 11 Grand Prix in a 19-year Formula One career that featured a record 322 starts. He left the F1 grid in 2011, but he's barely stopped racing since. It's a warm welcome to Rubens Barrichello. Hey Rubens, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Going very well, thank you. We're going to touch on what you're racing at the moment in a short while, but going back to March, which seems like a very long time ago, of course, with all that's happened since with COVID and the world grinding to a bit of a halt, the Aussie fans came very close to seeing you race again at Albert Park this year before the Australian Grand Prix had to be called off. Tell us about that Friday in Melbourne in March and what that was like for you. And as a five-time podium getter here in Melbourne, what was it like to get back out on that track on Thursday?
It was great. And it was Thursday when we were driving the cars. It was just back to a great reality, which was going fast through the streets of Albert Park. So I was over the moon. I had my friend Fisichella there racing on the same race as well. So it was something that we've done on the past for quite a few times together. I could see some of my friends in Formula One, and then came Friday in the morning. I look at the across the road, which was from the S5000 paddock to the F1 paddock, was just across the road, and I kind of saw something different. I thought, well, where are the guys? And they were already packing, and but news were not still there because McLaren was kind of pulling out because they said so, and then everything started.
Let's go back to some of your pomp time, I guess, in Formula One, the height of your career. So many people, of course, associate you with Ferrari. You've, of course, driven a fair few cars in your time in Formula One and in your motorsport career generally, but it's Ferrari where you got all but 2 of your 11 Formula One victories. You were there at the height of Ferrari's powers as well in the 2000s. I want to ask you, what made that team so good? What made it click? And could you have imagined when you signed that contract with Ferrari, they were of course on the up at that time, but that they would become such a dominant team during your time there?
I think it was a great combination because people don't imagine how good me and Michael worked together, and it was at the end of the day, it was almost like if Michael said, "Okay, let Rubens test." Like he had a vote of confidence on things I've tested, and the translation from the tunnel to the track was phenomenal. So you would go back and then they would say, okay, this car is going to be 0.385 faster because it has more downforce, and it would translate to the track. It was just amazing. So and then nowadays a lot of people come in with that bag of cash, and then people think that Formula One it is like that. But why a team is not where it should be is just because of that. Because it thinks that it needs money. But at the end of the day, if the wind changes from one side to the other, and you're testing a new front wing, and the guy who is testing it doesn't really have a feel for the wind, he's going to say that it's better or worse because he went faster or slower, and that's where the development of a race car goes bad. So people have no idea of that, but it's pretty simple in my case. You see, sometimes you would go maybe a couple of tenths slower, but that was a better front wing.
Of course, Rubens, the Tifosi the world over would be longing for a return to those days that you played a strong part in with Ferrari being so dominant. We see the teams really struggling at the moment and probably going to be struggling for the foreseeable future until we get a bit of a rule reset in a couple of years' time. You know what it's like in Italy when things can be a bit difficult for Ferrari. What do you think is missing from that team at the moment, and do you see them maybe facing a bit of a long road back to getting back to where Ferrari typically is?
Well, I mean, it's a good bunch of guys. Binotto, for example, he was my engine engineer, and he was on the top of his game when I was there. So I know him being as he is through a very difficult period in terms of pressure, but he's a great guy. But in reality, I think we don't know what really happens from last year, why the cars are much slower in the straight line. And I don't think we will know. But one thing for sure, knowing Ferrari, they are doing the best they can to improve a little bit of this car this year, but they are ready on next year's. That's for sure.
Rubens, you're one of a long line of drivers from Brazil, and there's something about Brazil in Formula One. They somehow just go together. Of course, many race winners, many world champions have come from your part of the world. Why does Brazil love Formula One? Why does Formula One love Brazil? And what was it about that connection that pushed you into becoming a motor racing driver and ultimately reaching for F1?
Well, I mean, it's since the years of Emerson Fittipaldi, Nelson, Ayrton. It's just something that when I first drove the go-kart, I said I want to be a Formula One driver, and I think from Brazil produces really good drivers. Financially, it is a country that doesn't do that well, so it's tough. But my dad, in a way, even though he didn't have the means to take me all up, he was really, really clever to compromise a lot of things, but to sell me in a way to a sponsor that became my partner for my long life in Formula One. So I gave back to him 25% every year at the end of the year, and he gave it to charity. So I tell you, my father was a visionary, and I thank him for there. And so I think from Brazilians and South American in general, they really good drivers. They have the go-karts at the beginning are really tough, and then we go to England, we go to this, we go to Italy, and then we get better cars, and off you go.
The last couple of years, though, it's been the first time in quite a while that we haven't had a Brazilian driver in Formula One. Why do you think that is? Is that passion still as strong? Is it just a bit of a coincidence?
It's just, in all honesty, I think that we still have the great drivers there. We have quite a few on the list to become Formula One drivers. But, I think Formula One is trying to change it back to the real world that we had on the past. But right now is just cash. So, if you have cash, you get into Formula One, and that's definitely not the case in Brazil.
Rubens, we obviously remember your Ferrari days very fondly, but you had a very big role in probably one of the more remarkable F1 stories in modern times, that single year of Brawn GP in 2009. Really troubled winter at the end of 2008 with Honda offloading the team and everything that came out of that. Talk us through the contrasting emotions. I mean, at the end of 2008, you must have wondered whether something was still going to happen in 2009, and then you look at what happened in 2009 with the team's success and you won some races. What was it like knowing that you had a bit of a rolling contract for the first few races? And when did you realise how good that car was? Because I know Jenson Button always harks back to that Barcelona test. But was there a time for you where you thought this car is going to be a fantastic car for us?
That was the best time of my career, in all honesty, because I was 4 months without a job. I kept on telling my friends that I felt that I was going to drive, and they thought I was crazy. Even my family, they thought I was going nuts, because you read the press those days. They already said that there was other drivers that they signed other drivers and this, and I kept on phoning Ross Brown, and Ross said, just wait, you are priority on my list, but we need some sponsor. We need something that it makes us all get together again. And then eventually, when he did call me, he said, "Can you be here on Friday?" I said, "I can be there anytime. I can fly myself there." So it was the best phone call that I've received in my whole career. And Benson sat on the car and did an installation lap and came back and looked at me and called me into the cockpit and said, "We're going to have a great year." And from there on, I already knew there was something special. And after some hours, I drove the car and felt for myself, and it was phenomenal. It was just amazing how that car was put together, with the details, and the Mercedes engine was a super drivable and powerful engine. So it was amazing. I remember like if it was yesterday when we went out and put a time, and then they rushly call us back to the pits to put more fuel in it, because it was super fast. We didn't want to show all we had and say full tanks.
We'll get back to Rubens in a minute, but first we're going to speak to Managing Director of Kaspersky APAC, Stefan Noemeyer. Stefan, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
No problem, Stefan. Kaspersky has recently celebrated the 10-year anniversary of their partnership with Ferrari. Tell us a little bit about what the partnership involves.
So obviously over the last 10 years, we are partnering with Scuderia Ferrari. So basically we are supporting Scuderia Ferrari with a bunch of cutting-edge cybersecurity technologies, which basically goes from the normal IT security into additional other services, which we're providing to them basically 24/7. Yeah, so you can imagine it's a weekly circuit, traveling from, at least during the normal times, traveling from one side of the planet to the other side of the planet. And obviously a lot of technology gets delivered across the planet as well. And whenever they start, they need to be ready, they need to be secured, and we are providing the security for Scuderia Ferrari.
What is it about that partnership, Stefan, between Kaspersky and Ferrari? What is it about that partnership that makes it so strong, and some of the synergies and shared values between the brands?
I think when you would look into it, you probably would see, obviously two completely different industries. Yeah, one is motor racing, cutting edge technology on their side, but exactly there are a lot of similarities, and these are the shared values we actually have. So when we look into what makes the difference of Ferrari in their industry is really cutting edge technology. It's the same for us. So these are basically two leading brands, on two different industries. We are one of the leading brands in cybersecurity. Ferrari, obviously, one of the leading brands when it comes to motorsport. But there's even more. Yeah, when we look into, and over the past 10 years, the relationship, the partnership which we have built with them, we really can see all these shared values. The great teamwork. Yeah, when you once had the experience to join Ferrari at a circuit, in being in their garage, during an F1 race, you really see how this teamwork between the individuals works. It's real spirit what they have, and a similar feeling you have when you get to a Kaspersky headquarter in Moscow and you see our R&D people, how they're working together to come up with the latest, best, newest technology. Also, lots of team spirit there. I think these are probably one of the main shared values we have. So it's really performance, cutting edge technology, and really that spirit for great teamwork.
And finally, I understand Kaspersky has recently launched a dedicated campaign for this 10-year anniversary. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Being a sponsor of Ferrari, being a technology partner of Scuderia Ferrari, so we launched a dedicated a communication campaign, basically informing about this very special partnership, the very special shared values we have. And with that, we actually want to motivate people, encourage people across the globe to really get this feeling about what is special on motorsport, getting excited about motorsport, but also getting excited about what actually cutting edge cybersecurity technology can do to support brands like Ferrari.
Stefan, look, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you for your time, guys, and please stay safe. Yeah.
And now it's back to our chat with Rubens Barrichello.
I just want to touch briefly as well on the final part of your Formula One career, which took you via Williams, of course, one of F1's great historic teams, as well as Ferrari, of course, so you managed to check both of them off. Of course, Williams, the family, is leaving Formula One, or has left Formula One this year. They've sold the team. Just tell us a little bit about your relationship with the Williams family, with Sir Frank, and do you think Formula One is a little bit poorer for them no longer being directly involved with the sport?
Well, to be honest with you, I the passion that I had for Williams was all through my career. All the stories, and even back, when we talk about even the Jones times when in '80 when they won it, and I had a passion for Williams long going, and but unfortunately when I got there, Sir Frank wasn't already the guy deciding things, and it was a moment in the career that everything was kind of a dismounting, because Patrick had already didn't like the way they were treating things, so he was kind of leaving. Sam Michael, which was a great friend, had a lot to do, and it was tough. It was a tough period, so it made me lose all the passion that I had for Williams, because then they put people at the top who had no idea how to command, and in all honesty, the car that I helped develop for 2012, then they told me that I wasn't driving anymore. So all that love, when you have that love, that you go and disappear all of a sudden, because there was very, very little money that just came from a driver, and he was the owner eventually of the team. So it was a sad period, because I thought 2012, when I raced the Indy cars, that could have been my last year. I was going to be 40, and I was on the top of my ability of driving. I had so much experience, and you could see the 2012 car, they won Barcelona, and we knew it was coming good because of the change of the engine and so on. So it was a pity that I wasn't driving that car, but I still, I'm still thankful for the 19 years that I had there, and I gotta be thankful. When my first go-kart, we went there, we didn't even have money to buy a tire pressure gauge. So when you think of all of that, you got to be thankful for the career I had, and I'm still having.
Rubens, one more before we let you go. We know you're 48 years old now and still racing this year in the Argentinian Super Touring Car Series, but you're also the father of two racing sons. Eduardo's competing for the F2000 title in the US. What kind of a racing dad are you? And were you more pleased or nervous to have your boys following in your footsteps? It must be a lot of emotion there for you.
Yeah, it is. I am, like everybody knows, I am emotional dad. That I cry even watching a Tom and Jerry cartoons. It's easy to get emotional with the kids, and but honestly, I try to be a dad there. I'm thankful that I have two lovely kids, Eduardo and Fernando. Fernando even came at the beginning of the year to me and said, "Dad, I don't want to disappoint you, but would you be okay if I tell you that I love soccer, and I would give it a time to stop my racing and play soccer?" I said, "Man, you are the most courageous guy to tell your dad that. So that gotta be fantastic. You are entitled of enjoying what you enjoy. You don't need to enjoy what I enjoy. So I feel glad that you said that, and I'm gonna help you as much as I can." And said that Eduardo keeps on going fast. I hope that we get a test for him in FIA Formula 3 soon. So for him to show his talent in Europe, and I said to Eduardo, I can open a door for you, but I cannot keep it open. So you are the one that need to go to the gym. You are the one that needs to sleep. You are the one that need to see where your weak points are, and I can only be your dad. If you want me to really tell you what I think you need more rear wing, but you are the one that needs to discover that. I'm not going to keep on telling you that. So with all of my experience, I can help him out for sure. but I can't really tell him what to do, because I think I became better and better. I'm sure that I became better and better with all my difficulties. So I'm thankful for all the tough times I had, and those are the great times, actually, because that's win is kind of uneasy. You can start from pole and win, but the real thing is like Hockenheim 2000, when I was 18th on the grid and I had no belief that I would win that race, and all of a sudden I was there. So thankful again for that.
Rubens, love taking a trip down memory lane with you this evening. It's been fantastic to catch up with you and hear about what you're still doing and the way your sons are coming through. Make sure you keep that right foot of yours planted, and thanks very much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you. All the best to you guys, and my best to a country that I love very much.
That's all for this episode of In the Fast Lane. Thanks for joining us, and a big thanks to this week's guest, Rubens Barrichello. Join us again next week. It's a rare weekend without racing in 2020, but we're going to catch up with one of the all-time F1 greats. That's an interview you won't want to miss. Until then, for Michael Laminato, I'm Matt Clayton. Join us next time for another lap in the Fast Lane.